Good morning everyone and welcome to the PCR webinar, which is intended as an overview and an introduction to the new Making Tax Digital regulations that come to effect in April 2019 and what this means for your business. My name is Nick Barber, I'm from PCR, and firstly I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to attend the webinar, and without further ado, let's get into the agenda. So what we're going to cover today is a brief explanation of MTD, its background, where it's come from, who does it apply to, if it applies to you, what you will have to do. We're going to talk about some dates and when it starts and when it's going to affect you, because it will affect companies dependent upon their current VAT periods. We're going to talk about signing up for MTD, the MTD and Opera 3 and how it affects Opera 3, and then we'll close off with a summary of steps that are required in order to become MTD compliant. So MTD, Making Tax Digital, is new legislation that's designed to transform the HMRC into one of the most digitally advanced agencies in the world, and so far the government has invested £1.3 billion into this initiative. Believe it or not, this is designed to make it easier for business to submit their tax records, and it starts in April 2019 with VAT, and will in future also come to include income tax and corporation tax as well. As I say, it's designed to eliminate all paper processes. So in years gone by, the VAT return was submitted on a piece of paper, VAT 100 form. That's subsequently been replaced with a replacement form on the HMRC website. Even with the current method, it allowed you to maintain your records in a paper format. These new regulations are designed to completely eliminate that. So you'll no longer be able to keep and prepare your VAT return just from paper records only, so copies of invoices and so on and so forth. Your VAT records must be digital, so whether they're contained within a compliant software system or within an Excel spreadsheet, those records must be digital and the VAT return must be generated from those records. Who does this apply to? Well, any VAT registered business where their turnover is above the current VAT threshold, which at the moment is set at £85,000. The government estimate that over 1 million businesses will be affected by this and will be mandated from the 1st of April, but they have allowed some organisations to defer for 6 months. So those organisations where they're in the charity sector, or they have group accounting, or they're based overseas, the HMRC have proactively contacted those companies. So as at the beginning of March, where we are now, the HMRC will have written to you to confirm whether or not, whether you have been deferred until the 1st of October. So what will you have to do? Well, you will have to ensure that you have a compatible software system to file the returns. You will no longer be able to enter values manually into a form or manually into boxes on a software system to then submit the return. The system will automatically calculate the values in box 1 to 9 from the VAT records that you maintain in a digital form. So the VAT records will need to include the business name that you're trading with, supplier or customer, the address, VAT registration number, invoice number, date, VAT code, net, gross, VAT values, etc. So this is data that typically is already contained within an accounting system. You'll need to preserve your records in a digital form for 6 years, and you'll need to create the VAT return and submit it in a digital format from those digital records, and that submission must be made to the HMRC via the government gateway using the new MTD VAT API. Interesting point here, and an important point, is your filing dates and payment dates do not change. And also to note that what is being submitted is purely the data in boxes 1 to 9. It's not the supporting data that make up the values from boxes 1 to 9. So if you're a Pegasus customer, now is a good time to look at how you currently prepare your VAT return, and there are a number of ways that you can do that if you are using Pegasus Opera for your financial accounting software. The first is the VAT processing module. So this has existed for a number of years in Opera. So there is already a VAT file, digital records of your VAT data in Opera, and the VAT processing module uses that table. But some sites don't use VAT processing as a means to calculate their VAT return. They may use other methods, or they may use VAT processing in conjunction with other methods. The VAT file collates data from the sales and the purchase ledger automatically. So every time you post a transaction onto those ledgers, a copy of that transaction and details of that transaction are stored into the VAT table. If you're using the cash book and the nominal ledger, you can also post transactions and details of transactions into the VAT table, but only if the VAT analysis option is ticked at the time of posting. If you post journals direct to the VAT nominal ledger accounts, they will not update the VAT file. Now, VAT processing is partly data agnostic, so it relies on you committing the data when performing the VAT return, and when it does that, it flags all transactions as being committed onto the VAT 100 form. If you subsequently post a transaction that relates to a prior period, you can still post that transaction with the correct processing date, but the next time you perform a VAT return, the VAT processing module will sweep that transaction up because it will recognise that it's not already been included in a VAT 100 form, or sorry, a VAT submission. The other way of calculating VAT return, and we see some clients using this, is they'll use the sales and the purchase daybook report. So they'll take a report that includes all the transactions over a VAT quarter or VAT period. That report will include the net, the VAT and the gross, and they'll use those figures to then pop into boxes 1 to 9 or reconcile the figures. Now, some clients will use VAT processing in conjunction with the sales and daybook report. They'll also use VAT processing in conjunction with daybook reports, and they'll also look at the nominal ledger analysis. So they'll look at the nominal ledger accounts and report on the values and entries that have been posted into those accounts. So with the release of Opera 3 2.60, and there's some new functionality to allow you to submit data via the Making Tax Digital API, and 2.60 utilises the existing VAT table data. So if you're already using VAT processing, you're a long way along the path of being compliant already, or at least ensuring you will be compliant moving forward. So this is what we're currently doing. So on the VAT return within the financials, we've got sales ledger, purchase ledger, nominal, and we use the VAT processing to prepare the VAT return that you can see here. The VAT processing module will summarise the data that's contained and then put the correct values into the correct box to give you your VAT online form. This can be submitted automatically using Opera, or you can simply log on to the HMRC website, enter your credentials, and then submit the VAT return manually, but entering the data in there. The new regulations are going to extend the current functionality, so you'll be able to submit your tax return, your VAT return, direct to the government gateway via the API. Now, a point about when MTD comes into effect, the government are letting everyone know that the new regulations start from the 1st of April, but it will affect companies depending on their current VAT return. So it will affect you when your first VAT quarter on or after the 1st of April. So in this example here, the client has a VAT quarter of March, April, May. That needs to be submitted by the end of June and paid by the 7th of July. Now, even though the 1st of April has passed, because the 1st of April is not at the beginning or on or after the first VAT quarter, the client will continue to use the VAT return using the current method. It is only after that VAT return, from June to August, you then need to submit the submission using the new MTD API return. So for quarterly returns, the earliest date for submission will be July 2019. Before you can make any changes or before you can submit your VAT via the new gateway, you will need to sign up to MTD. So you'll need to log on to your hmrc.gov.uk. If you enter the search term, use software to submit your VAT returns, it will then start to take you through a wizard, a process to sign you up to submit your VAT returns. This step must only be completed once your last VAT return using the current method, i.e. submitting it to the software or logging onto the HMRC website and entering the credentials. So only after you've done your last return using those methods should you sign up to this new method on the HMRC website. When you're ready to do that, in order to do that, as a sole trader, you will need date of birth and national insurance number, and for most of our clients, limited company, you will require your company registration number and also your corporation tax reference in order to complete the process. So MTD Opera 3 version 2.6 is available now. It includes the functionality for MTD and also for those clients for the payroll year end as well. Just so you are aware, MTD submissions will require an uplift to the scheduler system. So you will require an upgrade to version 2.2, and you'll also require Pegasus Online Filing Manager as well. So most payroll sites will already have that installed, but if you're using Scheduler to schedule backups, schedule server intensive tasks, then that will need an uplift. And if you do not have Scheduler already installed, Scheduler requires SQL Server or SQL Server Express. The new version will also require the .NET Framework 4.7.2, and there are some fairly stringent system requirements for that imposed by Microsoft. The .NET Framework requirement is a requirement for the government gateway, not for Pegasus. So all of these will need to be installed. And as I say, there are some fairly stringent requirements. So if you're in any doubt as to whether your systems will be compliant, please make contact with us. Older versions of Windows, so older versions of Server 2011 and 2012 Essentials, we know will not be supported, and there are some other restrictions as well. So if in doubt, please make contact. But as you can see on the new version, in the company profiles, you can see here there are some new fields for making tax digital, but we'll look at the software in a minute. Part of the new module, once MTD is switched on, is a new MTD Centre. Now we're going to look at this in a minute. There is a restriction as to how far we can go because we can't authorise the software ourselves and we haven't signed up to MTD at this stage. But as you can see from here, there is a new MTD Centre where you'll be able to see details of previous submissions and also look at current submissions ready to go. Before you can do any of this, and as I say, we can't show you too much of the software right now, but before you can do any of this, you need to grant authority from Opera 3. So once you've signed up, you'll then need to grant authority to the HMRC from within Opera 3. Opera 3 will prompt you every time you go into MTD. If you're not authorised already, it will ask you to authorise, and it will take you to, within Opera, it will take you to the HMRC website, ask you to enter your HMRC credentials with multi-factor authentication. It will then send you a PIN number or phone you, depending on your methods, and once complete, you'll be notified that authentication is complete. Now that MTD is quite high up on people's priority list, we've had a few calls into the support department. So I'll just cover a few of those off in frequently asked questions. So some clients are using VAT accounting, group VAT accounting. So, and they're obviously concerned that it will be included. I can confirm that Opera 3 MTD functionality will include group VAT accounting. It will allow you to consolidate the VAT records from a number of companies that you have running from within Opera 3. providing they are all on the same VAT number. You can then enter the consolidation company in the MTD options, and from that consolidation company, you can then perform the submission. Many clients currently amend or manually amend their VAT return. Now, with the new method, you won't be able to physically amend the box values that you see. So currently you can go onto the HMRC website and type in numbers into the boxes. That's not going to be possible any longer, and you won't be able to do that from within the software. So for instance, those clients that are trading in the EU but don't have the EC VAT module, or those that have special arrangements agreed with the HMRC, they need to make manual adjustments to their VAT return. That's no longer going to be possible by just changing the figures within the boxes. So there is now a new VAT adjustment, a new VAT code adjustment that allows you to make those adjustments manually for you. Another question we're asked is, can we use spreadsheets? The answer to that is yes. And so spreadsheets are a valid form of maintaining your records digitally. And finally, for those clients that are not using Opera for their financial accounting, there will be a new module available for purchase called Advanced MTD, which will allow you to import transactions for your VAT return and then submit them via the gateway. There's also, the HMRC are also confirming there is a soft landing period. So this is really only intended for larger, more complex businesses where they have data in disparate systems. The HMRC are allowing you to copy and paste data, and that's allowed to be in place until April 2020. The VAT return must still be submitted via the MTD API. Are the filing dates changing? No, they're not. We've already covered this, but just to confirm, your VAT return dates remain the same, your payment deadlines remain the same, and also to confirm, no additional information is being provided on the VAT return. So again, there's no additional information that is being submitted. So let's have a look at some of this within Opera 3. As I've already mentioned more than once, there is a limit to how far I can go today, but hopefully I can give you a feel for the new module that's available. So within Opera 3, as I've already mentioned, there is a current VAT processing module. So it's here that we will perform the VAT return. That will then trawl the system for uncommitted data, and it's here that we'd enter the VAT period end. We'd produce a VAT return, and we would commit that data to the VAT form. Okay, so if I enter the end of my next period, which is the 30th of June, you can see that it knows the start date because I've committed data up to the end of March. I can now commit that data. So if you are not using this, you will need to use this, this system in order to clear your VAT file down. Without doing that, you will not be able to switch MTD on. So within the company profiles, here I've got a new option for MTD for VAT, so I can switch that on, and I can also enter the date where I start. I can enter a consolidation company if necessary, and my frequency I can also change as well for my own VAT submission frequency. Once I've saved that, the software will alert me, say now that you've made Making Tax Digital live, you can't use the old VAT processing module. You need to use the new MTD VAT Center that you see up here. The system won't allow you to do this if you have transactions still enabled. And from the new MTD VAT Center, as soon as I go to log into there, the system will tell me it's not authorized, so it performs a check every time I go in. If I say yes to that from within Opera 3, it will then take me through to the HMRC website and step me through the wizard and ask me to enter my credentials. You can see from here that although I can't actually access the menu items at the moment, but we've got the option to commit the data as we have done currently on the previous VAT processing. I can also submit my data as well to the HMRC. Unlike the old system where I could manually amend the values in boxes 1 to 9, I can no longer do that. So there is now a new VAT code that we can create for a VAT adjustment, and the transaction type is adjustment, and it's here that we then say which boxes we would like to amend. So although you're not able to adjust the boxes themselves, you can make adjustments to adjust the values in box 1 to 9, as you see there. So hopefully that gives you an overview of the new functionality within Opera. From a practical perspective, what do you need to do now? So we're at the beginning of March now. So what we would suggest is that you identify the date of your first period for MTD. So review your current VAT quarters and look at when you will need to submit your first MTD submission and work back from there. So at the end of the last quarter, we will need to make sure that all the transactions are committed and flagged to the VAT 100. After that, you'll need to register with the HMRC. You'll also need to install some software. So we'll need to install the latest version of Opera 3, which is 2.6, Secret Express if it doesn't exist, or if you have full-blown SQL, that's fine, Online Filing Manager, and Scheduler. We can configure, once the Opera 3 and that additional software is installed, we can then configure VAT processing for the new regulations. So we can add your new VAT adjustment codes and we can switch on MTD for you as well. Once we've done that, we can then authorise Opera 3 with the HMRC, and after that, you are then ready to go. But what we would suggest is that you be prepared. So try, and if you can, be early for your first return under the new regs, so that we can avoid any last-minute panics. And without further ado, I'd just like to say thank you very much for taking the time to attend the webinar today. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me direct. My email address is at the bottom there, or also email the support team as well. But thank you very much, and look forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you.